Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Doctors podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined from Holland, from the Netherlands, by David. David Enker, been on the show before, and a really deep thinker like myself, which is great. And yeah, should we be deep thinking and also deep feeling as well, right? Because it ain't just about what we think; it's about what we feel. So, David, what does healing mean to you?
Thank you, Simon. It's great to be back. Yes, healing. And it's good you mention thinking and feeling at the same time because one is usually underrated, underestimated by focusing on the other. But healing is, yes, it's a very complicated thing. I have been thinking a lot about it since you bring it up uh, almost every time, I suppose. It's um, it's an individual experience, I think, where you have your own personal background and history. We all share that we have this adoption experience. I think mostly just not long after birth, and then there is a more primal trauma that requires a different kind of healing than when you're involved in a traffic accident or something like that. Um, in the latter case, you can do psychotherapy or EMDR or any of the tools that are available. But with a deeper laying trauma, it requires a deeper approach. And if I can speak for myself, it's something that came up in my 40s, if not 50s, when I worked on my book, that I got confronted with the trauma of adoption in a different perspective by hearing other people's experiences. And I thought, oh, I've never really thought of it like that. You may ask if that's, waking up sleeping dogs. Like if I wouldn't have been busying myself with all these stories, I would not have had any issue. But I think it's been there all along. The primal trauma, if I can call it that. And I've had a lot of therapy throughout my life, which in no small part was about, as you talk with your therapist about your childhood. So let's talk about your parents. Well, that's a complicated story, of course. But it, I think in the end, didn't help. It required a multifaceted approach where I think I had more help with, let's say, a mindfulness approach, which is to say a almost meditative state of mind where you analyze your feelings and your thoughts and don't judge them, but see them passing, basically. And when it comes to these abstract traumas that a adoption just after birth brings along, it's something that I think are things like anxiety and depression, where there is the approach of science and medication, which helps in no small amount, but it's not enough. I would say that the more holistic approach does equally, if not more, better to a deeper laying trauma like adoption, where yes, by listening to other people's stories, you see things in a different light. And if you approach that with the let's say the mindfulness approach, you hear somebody like Damon Davis you had on today, or at least the broadcast, he tends to learn from his guests, and he said he had a very positive story himself, which helps. Whereas I think I was relatively lucky, but I'm not in reunion like he is or was. I think his mother passed. But I'm having a reverse. I was in contact with my mother, but basically lost her along the way because of complicated relationships and stuff. And that's basically my trauma, is the double rejection. But I think I've dealt with it in a way that, like I just said, the mindfulness approach, but also my own family, my wife and son, give me a lot of consolation. And art, just writing. I'm creating these reels now in response to my the promotion of my book, and I've grown to love it so much that I use it for what other people maybe do as painting or music, or it's just a creative outlet that knows no bounds. And I wish that for everybody, that they find their way to express themselves. And if it's not a person that's artistically inclined, you can, do it in stuff that will give you flow, like sport or, having good social contacts. I think that's key to a lot of things, is to stay active in communicating and socializing, listening to other people's stories.
Yeah, there's so much there, my friend. The first thing is that you talked about right at the top of that section. You talked about underestimating or overestimating or underestimating thoughts and feelings. Which way around do you see it? What do you see?
Yeah, for a long time I thought that you can solve any problem with rational thought. Like in my 20s, I was a staunch atheist and a rational approach to almost everything. But that's stranded. And I realized that the emotional world is sort of there, even if you are not aware of it. It's just asking for attention in other ways, like an anxiety or a depression. And if you don't give in to your feelings in a more honest way, they will wreak havoc. So you need to address your emotional world, at least as important as approaching it in a more realistic or rational way, by, for example, the psychotherapy. Or that's a very rational approach, which I'm not discrediting, but I think they both need attention.
Yeah.
Your body isn't, or your soul is not a machine. It's much more complex than that. And I think you've had a nice approach to this as well. With I forgot how you said it, but you also had what I would probably can classify as a mindfulness approach.
Well, yeah,
it's just the words that I don't really like, and I think you also have a bit of an issue with it.
Yeah, I don't particularly like the words. The main thing is what the words are pointing to.
Yes.
So, on one hand, we can jump on our thoughts, or our feelings and try to get to analyze them. We can try and get to the bottom of them, or at one level, and on another level, we can kind of, as you say, see them pass by.
Yes.
So I think for me, the first thing is the disidentification from our feelings, our thoughts and our feelings. So seeing that we are not our thoughts, we are not our feelings.
Yes,
and we are not, and therefore we are not our trauma. Because
not only that, but I think it was Damon who also pointed out that you are not you shouldn't identify yourself as the adopted trauma person, or let yourself be identified like I am an adoptee is something a lot of people put on their Twitter handle or something like that. I have it as part of it too, but it's not who you are.
Indeed. It's for me, it's just a shorthand.
Yes.
It's
you would like to summarize your identity in a couple of bullet points on social media, but that's pretty dangerous because you pinpoint yourself to these things, and it cuts you're cutting yourself short for the much richer experience that life can offer you.
Yeah. So how do you identify yourself so as to open up that wider experience?
I used to write it down, and then I do indeed have a couple of bullet points that are the rational ones. Like I've got a couple of traumas. It's not just the adoption experience, but I've got my Parkinson as well.
Yeah.
And I survived the 7/7 bombings in London, which was a pretty traumatic experience.
Yeah.
I've had 3 concussions where I was unconscious, waking up in a hospital for no reason. But these are just bullet points. Like it's very tempting to see yourself as a victim some way. I tend to make a connection between these traumas and my Parkinson. But even if that would be the case, so what? You need to step over these things, and that's where the next step comes in. And you need to liberate yourself from these things. And just talking about it now gives me a shiver in my spine because I know that's the good thing to do. And it's very difficult to express that with rational words. But anyone who's been in this position, who's experienced trauma in one way or another, knows that they have to break free from it at some point. And I think time heals a lot of wounds. That's one. But just again, close contact with people, talking, socializing, and a walk in the woods, looking at how precious the things are that you do experience in life. Life is really, really short. So, I've just had a visit to a visit by my adoption mother, who's 86, and she's just full of life, very happy and always positive. And she walks with a Zimmer frame and had to come with a taxi. But I wish I could reach her age and be that positive in life. And she's always been really positive, and she is born with it. And some people are born with a negative disposition. Like my biological father tends to be quite negative about things. I hope he's not listening.
Uh,
But I tend to be on the positive side myself, and that's something I've learned over time. And I think it started with letting go of these uh, these rational thoughts. Like it has to be like this, it has to be like that. That's the rule. That's science. Then once you let go of that, it's a liberation.
are we liberating ourselves from our trauma?
Well, you can never really get rid of it altogether, but it can be like an attachment, like an somebody who's missing an arm learns to deal with just one arm. You adapt, and that's up to you to walk that path.
Yeah. So that's where the mindset bit comes in then, does it, for you?
Yes, I tend to now emphasize on feelings more than thoughts, because I know thoughts are uh, going on a loop, like a feedback loop. I wake up, I still have this problem waking up in the middle of the night thinking about something rather, and that just loops. Like it just becomes a completely useless loop. And then I just breathe and try to distance myself from it, focus on my breath and breathing, and yeah, gradually it passes. And then I'm getting overwhelmed by a relaxing feeling. And yeah, I've seen my thoughts as a real problem. And it's the trick to, you need to learn yourself tricks to let them for what they are, just thoughts.
Yeah. You also talked about, so we got, you talked about having a shiver up your spine. Clearly a kind of like an emotional response, a body response. You're talking about disassociating, not listening to the thoughts, stepping aside from them. You also mentioned about seeing things in a different light. So listening to other people's stories, listening to other people's perspectives, and those taking positive stuff or seeing the world differently because you've seen things from somebody else's perspective. Can you give us an example of that?
Yes, this requires empathy, and I've had some friends who lack that. And that's fine. You need to accept that with your friends, that they might not ask you how are you doing, and just start talking about themselves. And some people are in this passive way, like you are the person who's always listening to a friend and not talking. And I can be fine with that to a certain degree. It's not completely nice, but uh, listening to people's stories is you can just take it for what it is, but you can also try to step in their shoes and try to be them, and that's empathy. And once you approach people in that way, it can sometimes be confronting when somebody is really depressed or traumatized, or and you start empathizing with them too much, you get dragged along. But I'm not that scared of that. I used to be scared of people when, when they're really suicidal or really depressed, and I thought if I listened one more minute to this person, I'm gonna jump out of the window. And I'm not afraid of that because I can appropriately distance myself from this person. But just generally, on average, I guess you can, you have your baker around the corner or the girl behind the counter in the supermarket, and yeah, just get loose by getting a little chat is heartwarming for both participants. And I try to do that actively or even unconsciously now with any encounter that I have. I used to be really grumpy and, just angry at the world. And yeah, the last 10 years or so warmed me up, especially the last 4 or 5 years with, well, my son, but also, this Parkinson diagnosis that taught me to appreciate not every moment, but also every person. Like there are some really unhappy people in the world, and you'd be amazed if you listen to them, how much they can warm up. And that's, I think, with new social media, that's a problem where people just vent and take that in their real life. I notice if I spend too much time on social media, I get my shivers, my Parkinson's symptoms play up. And this is just a recent discovery. I need to, disassociate myself from social media in that case, and do a drawing or a walk, or I guess it touches on some really fundamental parts of your brain when you're being triggered by especially stuff like Twitter is really working on your negative indignation button. And with Instagram, I've just filtered out all the negative stuff and only do positive things like dancing and cats and music and stuff that makes me happy.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things you touched on earlier was the challenge of the rational thought, and trying to. I guess we're talking about pre-verbal trauma, so
Yes.
we don't have words for it. So if we don't have words for it, we can't have thoughts for it. We can only really have feelings for it. It seems to me.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. That's the challenge. Why? Yeah. Is that the reason that we have to do the deeper stuff that you're talking about rather than just talk therapy? Is that?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's that deep to enjoy every moment. It may seem like a big leap to people who are not used to it, who are living in a rational mindset, to make that jump to the little things, to appreciate the little things. And with regards to therapy, it's good to have been through that phase. Like I've had, my guess would be at least 10 years of therapy, which was 90% dealing probably with my adoption and everything related to it. But if I think about it now, I think, what a waste of time. But again, I'm just done with it. That's not to say that it's useless. So for people who are maybe either younger or have never had therapy, I can highly recommend it. It's just a phase that is also having its benefits. But then you're talking about pre-verbal trauma. I don't think there are many therapists who are equipped to deal with that. You know, they tend to think in practical solutions, and you know, you come up with a question and they just bounce it back to you saying, well, what do you think? And there you go. What do you think? Well, thinking is part of the problem in this case. So there is no therapy that can help with that unless it's alternative therapy. But I'm not really a big fan of that because that's too many quack stuff. But yeah, the pre-verbal trauma, I think when you read a novel, let's say a fiction novel where you're living in the head of a person, you're, you know, being a psycho or a murderer or something like that. Even that is taking you out of your own comfort zone. And once you're done reading, you might have learned that stepping in someone else's soul for just a temporary period of time makes you this split moment once you've finished that observation of being someone else and you return to yourself. You think, oh, right, that's it. I see myself now. I see the little child that's crying and that's asking for his mummy, and the mummy is not there. And you can sit next to your little version and say, it's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. And then you're consoling yourself.
Yeah, that's what I think. That's what some people call parts therapy. That's parts therapy. Yeah. So there's been a few therapists and fellow, you know, adoptees who are therapists and fellow adoptees who have done, you know, been patients, if you like, or been clients of doing this internal family systems, it's called, or it's a branch of therapy, internal family systems. It's also known as parts therapy, and it's about looking at the different parts of a person, the different that's kind of trapped in that time, shall we say, or in the person in that time, like the 4-year-old,
yeah,
whoever, you know, that little boy who is looking for his mum and upset because
yeah. Well, that's again just a name. It's a good covering a good concept. But even without the trauma, my wife has this ability to look her younger self up when she's in distress. And she doesn't have pre-verbal trauma as far as I know. But when dealing with anxiety, which can come from a night's drink or something like that.
Yeah, parts therapy isn't exclusive to adoptees.
No,
just one thing.
I reckon. But yeah, that's at least one way of dealing with it. But that's maybe strange when you talk to a 2 weeks old baby. Yes, it's going to be all right. But he's like, but when you hold a baby, you realize they don't talk back to you, but they do look at you. And they are more capable of communication than you might give them credit for. And you can do that with yourself as well. I had the pleasure of holding my baby 5 years ago when he was just born, because it was with a C-section. So I was the first one to hold him, and I held him, body to body contact. I took off my shirt and was talking to him, and it was, like a little bit like talking to myself. It's like stuff saying like it's a wild world out there, but you'll manage. You might come across some adversity, but that might make life more colorful. And yeah, in this case, I didn't say this, but I guess I could project now saying you're lucky you're not given away or put up for adoption for whatever reason. But for those who are, it's yeah, there is, when you say healing, I I have my first association of like a broken bicycle, and you pump up the tires, or once they had a puncture and it works again. But healing with a trauma doesn't mean that it's completely fixed. Like, you could have a plaster in your soul, maybe an invisible plaster, but you can only give it a place where it sits comfortably, and like a book in your bookshelf. And you think, oh yeah, that was adoption. And then you might have a negative association with it. And you think, oh, look, there's a negative association, but I'm standing here now. So why bother? And put the book away.
Yeah. Was that moment, your son's birth, was that a healing moment for you?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was quite radical because it was like overnight. And that, like, staying awake all night with my wife, and then it became really chaotic, and then we were wheeled to the operating room. I could be there, and I thought the woman said to me, you wouldn't be the first one if you faint, so I'm just telling to let you know. And I said I can manage. And yeah, it was, like some people say, the most beautiful moment in your life. I can testify that that's the case.
Yeah. One of the things that you said at the top is that healing is an experience. And I think that moment with your holding your son and body to body with your son, that was an experience. So it's kind of, it's all consuming. It's not a thought, it's not a feeling, it's something more, it's more profound, it's deeper than that.
Yes. Yeah, I see. This still goes on to this day. Like, my son is having fever now, and I'm feeling like I don't have the fever, but I feel really uncomfortable. Like I am him. It might be weighing on too much projection, but I can untouch these connections. But generally, yeah, he looks like a combination of his parents, and he's his own soul. And I like to see myself as that, as well, as we adoptees have these separated nature nurture things. But I like to focus more on what makes you unique what's your third part? Not nature, not nurture, but you. What's your uniqueness? And I see that with my son, and I see that with myself. Like when I still had contact with my biological mother, she would say, "Oh, you look like this and that family member." And I don't know these people. I've never met them. I never will. And with the family that raised me, which is quite a different breed of people, if I can say it like that. They're really fine people, but there is a distance, and like we don't look like each other, obviously, like we're not blood related. So I've always had this quest for uniqueness, like what distinguishes myself from other people, and find my ways in particularly in art. And I had the luck to have grown up in an artistic family. Like both my uncles and my grandfather were professional artists in painting, and my father was an actor at some stage. But that gave me a tool set for expressing myself. But it's not enough to have a pen in your hand and a piece of paper or a brush and thinking, oh, let the muse talk now. It's something, like when you're in flow, it's something you only realize once it's happening. Or falling in love. It's as much as you want to fall in love, it won't happen. And you think, forget about it. And then suddenly you meet this person. It's not a golden rule, but it happens more often than not, I find. And that's with this focus on maybe also trauma, is when you're hoping to find an answer, it becomes a fixation that becomes an obstacle to itself. But once you like swimming, right? I like to swim as well, even though I haven't done it in a while. But I know how much you can get into a rhythm. And once you do it often enough, it's liberating for your soul. Because you're in, just rhythm alone is something that I find with dancing. Like it's just something that takes you out of your mind in a good way.
So that I'm seeing that dancing. So here's how I'm seeing it. Right, dancing is respite from the mind, but connecting with your son was a healing moment. So that seems like a useful distinction to me somehow.
Yeah, when I'm sitting with my son and he's not having one of his tantrums, but his good moments, it's like my battery is being charged. And when I'm drawing or something like that, or dancing, then it's being discharged, then it's being used. Maybe that makes sense.
Yeah. Can you think of any? I like that distinction. Can you think of any other healing moments? Do any other healing moments come to mind, David?
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult with my Parkinson to travel, but when the symptoms are good enough, what I really like is travel, because that's when you, especially on your own. I've traveled a couple of times on my own and abroad, and that's when you're being confronted with yourself and your worst demons, but also your power. That's very if you're talking about pre-verbal stuff than when you travel on your own and you have to survive. Like if you're going on a budget, then you get to learn yourself, your strength, and your I just like to see it as John Travolta when he's walking like he's the man with his flares, and everybody's looking at him like he's so confident. That's the kind of feeling that I get when I'm traveling on my own.
Yeah, but without the flares, right?
Without the flares, although I still had them way too late.
So is that the start of Saturday Night Fever where he's walking down the street? The
Yeah,
credits or something like that? Is that
yeah,
it?
I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
either that or Grease,
Right.
but I think it's Saturday Night Fever.
So you're seeing you're seeing your own strength. You're realizing the strength that you always had already.
Yeah, you become
Oh,
aware of it, where when you're sitting behind a computer or you're just in your cozy home, you become lazy, complacent, or whatever, and take things for granted and lose sight of more primal things.
yeah.
You
So
can learn a lot from people who've either traveled but also have been in distress, have had some adversity in life, tend to have more interesting ways of approaching life.
so if I'm tying two different things that you said together, you talked about um, healing being seeing things in a different light. Perhaps traveling gives you the ability to see yourself in a different light.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's just one of. It's something you have to discover yourself. I just took a leap of faith when I was 20, and I thought, am I going to Australia or America? And I went to America just on a whim. I took a Greyhound trip, which was on a budget, so I was eating M&Ms and drinking Coke.
Healthy.
And I've come across some really weirdos and great people as well. And yeah, I was alive. And I wrote about that in my book as well. Just verbatim from my diary of the time. And when I read it now, I still think that's a lot of wisdom from such what I usually associate with lots of naiveness when you're 20. You're still a child, really. People send to war fronts on that age, and I think you're just a child. But when I kept a diary, I looked at it from a different way at life. It was the first time that I was thinking about what makes life interesting. So I was talking about friendship and wanting to have a girlfriend, and these were maybe still things that fit a 20-year-old, but not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just combined with who am I? Who am I really, to phrase Damon Davis again.
So what else has helped you? What are the healing moments of the being that have helped you see the world differently, see yourself differently, experience yourself differently?
Yeah,
Well,
I just mentioned art, which goes two ways. You can maybe be creative and do stuff yourself, but also in a passive way. So I remember the first time I went to the Museum of Modern Art in Amsterdam and experienced a Francis Bacon painting for the first time, and I just let it be for what it was, a rather gruesome portrayal of life and death, and in a slightly surreal way. And I just absorbed it, and realized, yeah, this is just life. And somebody has found a way to express himself in that. And I thought, this is great. This is opening yourself up to a new experience, and that is something, a button I switched before I entered that room. I was just entering that room saying, I want to be amazed, I want to be surprised. And in the Museum of Modern Art in Amsterdam, there's a lot of rubbish. So often I walk into a room and I think, oh, this is just bollocks. My 1-year-old kid can do this better. But if you are lucky enough to bump into, I had a similar experience with Mark Rothko, who makes these enormous canvases in the Tate Modern in London, um, which is about death. And it's a rather macabre experience being in a room surrounded by these really dark abstract paintings. But it also had something uplifting because it was speaking about an aspect of life that is part of it, which is death. And yeah, there have been many experiences like this in museums where I thought this is great. And also, yeah, with relationships, you know, when I just thought this is not gonna work, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to let you go. And then yeah, it's painful, but in your 20s, it's not that unusual. And I remember one particular example where, yeah, the other party wasn't all too happy about it, but we let it drag on for half a year longer. And I thought, where is this going? And then I said, no, this is really not working. We need to finish this. And it was after that ended that I went on my trip to America, and I felt invincible. It was like the prime of my life. I I stopped with my study as well. I was studying physics, and I saw that ending. Like this is part of the rational narrative that I saw collapsing in front of my eyes. And I just thought, fuck it. I'm just going to do what I want to do now. I'm not going to wait till I'm in my 30s for a study to have completed. And I might be too old for living a life I want to have now. And yes, there are moments of regret that I should have maybe done it better. But as an adoptee, I couldn't commit myself to this career that I thought wasn't part of who I am, whatever that was. But it wasn't that. It wasn't this rational human being. I went on a quest that started on that day when I broke up with my girlfriend and stopped with my physics study. That I went on this quest that is probably still going to this day, although I think I've had the peak many years ago. Of
what's the quest for?
well, it's liberation from constraint of what society wants from you or people want from you. Is the opposite of freedom is I know it's a very paradoxical thing, because with freedom comes responsibility, because you're never really free. I've learned that along the way, but that's all right. You just deal with the consequences along the way. Like your wallet gets stolen, or I had my bike stolen one time on a bike trip. The whole trip was ended. But yeah, you become resourceful, and you find other ways of uh, dealing with the moment, or yeah, with life. There is a funny film. I had a lot of funny insights from movies. There's a Dutch film called Turkish Delight, which is a 70s movie, and it's about a young couple, and they just do what they want to do until the girl gets cancer, and then it becomes a tragedy. But halfway through the movie, they are having lots of sex, and they they are driving their car in the Dutch countryside for whatever that may be. There's not much of it, but there is a little bit of flat land that you can get lost. And they go along a canal, and there's a sign saying the letter Z, and he says Z, and she looks at the sign, and she looks at him, and she says Z, and they take the car. They put the car next to the sign, and they have sex next to that sign. It's just a small symbol of just living. It's maybe it's Paul Verhoeven, who also did Total Recall, and he always has a sexual reference in any of his movies. Black Book he's done as well. There's always gratuitous sex in any of his movies, but I had to laugh because it was just showing you what freedom in life can mean. And yeah, that's something you discover in the moment when you are open to it.
Yeah, open. I was going to use that word again. Right? It seems like there's an openness here. We're talking about an openness to seeing ourselves differently, openness to letting life unfurl the way it's supposed to do, an openness to the thoughts and feelings that are coming and going within us, an openness to things going wrong, an openness. Yeah, openness seems to be the theme.
Yeah, the paradox is, of course, you can't open yourself up like you open your zipper. It's something that sometimes need a push, like you're being bullied in school, and you become Woody Allen, who is a genius in another field. You have to find it out for yourself, but yeah, it's a leap of faith. And the strange thing is, the term leap of faith doesn't have a translation in the Dutch language, but it is something that you have to do. It's like stopping smoking. Like, I smoked in my 20s, and I just thought, how am I going to do this? This is not going to work. This is bad for your health. And then what do you do stop? That's what requires this same magical force that is open yourself up requires.
Yeah, because you've been hearing me recently asking 3 questions. What does healing mean to you? What helps us heal? And what hinders our healing? and kind of what I'm getting from you is the second theme to what helps us heal is openness.
Yeah.
And then if I go for an ultra rational approach, then what hinders our healing is being closed down, is being yeah. But there must be something bigger than that.
Yeah, there is. Oh, I mean, you shouldn't always believe what people tell you, and you need to shrug it off. So one way you want to talk to people from an empathetic point of view, because you can learn from them, but you also need to create a shield against bad influences from people, either on social media or in the outside world, where you need to be, yeah, fuck off. Just don't pay attention to what advice people are giving you in sometimes well meant, but often out of jealousy. They want only worse for you, not the good. They want the bad for you, and you need to make that distinction. It's very easy to be damaged by wrong friends and wrong connections, but if you radiate this openness and this positivity without being, no disrespect, but as some Americans sometimes can be too positive, that it devalues the term love. I love you after you've had a burp, and then it loses its value. That 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 is that's not good in that way. But you need to have a strong sense of self that accumulates over time by yeah, filtering out the good and the bad in the right place. And I've just become really, I can honestly say, quite happy the last few years. Like when I think back on therapy, on my problems, I think that's in the past tense, in the past, and you just, yeah, you just need to get on, really. It, there is no magic wand that can take somebody out of their own harness or skeleton, but you can try. You can always try. You can always help others, even if it's just to help yourself. But you notice that as soon as you do that, and that person smiles, you smile from the inside, and you think, what am I bothered again? Why was I what was it what I was thinking? Oh yeah, trauma. Oh shit. Now it's back.
Can I answer my own question with something that you said earlier in the conversation? Yeah. So the third question is, what hinders our healing? And what hinders our healing, or what maybe is perhaps over relying on our on the rational stuff, over depending, overworking the thought stuff, and not at the expense of the feeling stuff. Does that sound about right?
Yes, and what's your answer to this?
Well, to go again, to use your kind of approach, being open to exploring the feeling stuff. And because that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm having a break from listening to any. I'm not having a break from the podcast, right? But I'm having a break from listening to any audiobooks about.
Yeah, I heard you talking about that.
Trauma, mindset, neuroscience, anything, right? I'm just listening to what regular people listen to, right? Like the radio and stuff, right? Or fiction books.
Yeah.
So that is the practical, and that's what the therapist has suggested and then insisted on.
Yeah.
And it seems you did that early. You did that spontaneously yourself when you were younger.
Yeah, I was forced to, really.
What do you mean by forced to?
Well, circumstances drove me to start this investigation and this openness.
So the circumstances were that
I wasn't open at all. I was closed as could be.
So something happened to open you up.
Yeah, well, it wasn't working, whatever it was.
Okay, so you had a realization.
Yeah.
So you saw things differently. Something you saw that.
I took a dive in the abyss. I really thought that it's like a blind action. I thought whatever's gonna happen, it'll be good. What have I got to lose? That's usually also what I come up with is I'm still breathing. I'm still having a heartbeat. I'm still having my brain. What have I got to lose? I take the other side. I take the left turn. And I see what happens. It's a gamble. But it's better than living a life that's predicted. I couldn't understand people who were stepping in their father's footsteps. First of all, I didn't have a father. Second of all, I just couldn't understand how, if your dad is a banker and you would want to be a banker as well, is that your life? Is that your dream is that your exploration of this miracle that is given to you? There's so much more. There's so much beauty in the world. There's so much awe. And it's up for grabs. That's like how Louis C.K. had a comedy sketch that there's food on the floor. You can just pick it up. There's apples, Adam and Eve or something. It's all there.
That sounds like a good place to bring it in.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey. We all have to walk it and hopefully get more out of it than the predictable.
Yeah.
It's great stuff.
Great stuff. Thank you, David. Thank you, listeners.
Thank you. Looking forward to the next podcast.
Okay, my friend. Me too.
All right.
Speak to you soon, listeners. Take care.